各位朋友，大家早安。欢迎各位进入到我们 Cifa 加勒比投资与金融协会的直播间。今天呢，我们要为各位所主讲的这个项目呢，是格林纳达投资公民项目以及美国 E2签证。那么首先呢，让我跟大家介绍今天主讲的2位嘉宾。第一位呢是来自于就是我们太平洋的另一端，来自于格林纳达的律师 Ms. Harris。那大家呢都知道，有关于格林纳达的申请，有关于格林纳达或者是其他加勒比国家的申请呢，都必须通过 local agent， 也就是政府授权的代表律师才可以递件，并且完成整个的申请。那我们这边的这个 Harris 呢，她就是政府所指定授权的律师之一。好。他现在目前在镜头上 ，Sheila 可以跟我们打个招呼吗 ？Hi Sheila，I'm introduce you to the audience. Can you just say hello to them?
Hi. Good morning, everybody in China, and it's night in Grenada. Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
然后呢，在Sheila 的演讲呢，大概是在25分钟左右的时间。在她的介绍之后的话呢，我们会邀请到另一位来自于美国的这个。美国律师 Robert Lubin 先生来为各位介绍有关于美国 E2的这个项目。那 Robert Lubin 呢，他是美国有30年职业历史的和经验的这个美国律师，他在各类的这个移民签证方面呢都有非常丰富的经验。他的上线时间呢大概是在9点50分，我们会邀请他上线。好。今天的这个直播呢，因为对方2位这个嘉宾呢都已经是在晚上的时间，所以呢，其实这个机会也是相当不容易的。所以呢，我们希望呢，今天各位朋友能够充分的利用这个直播的时间呢，向我们的嘉宾提问，欢迎大家在留言板上留言。好，那我们就首先邀請 Miss Harris 给我们做有关于格林纳达投资公民项目的介绍。
Right. Anyway， 就我需要做你刚刚整个翻译吗 ？Hello。
Hi。
Anyway， 我需要做你整个翻译吗？还是 ？Alright. So, right, Sheila. I think it's your time. You can start by any time.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Sheila Harris. I'm a local licensed agent, and I am a director of the company Zenship Inc., which is your licensed local agent in Grenada. We have been involved in citizenship by investment from its inception since it came back into being in Grenada in 2014. Grenada Citizenship by Investment is governed by an act, Act number 15 of 2013. And this act, once we follow this act, we should have no issues with our applicants being successful. Your local licensed agent assists you with the preparation of your applications in accordance with this act.
格林纳达。这位是这个 Sheila Harris， 是我们的这个处理这个格林纳达公民项目的主要递件的律师。那他同时也是格林纳达的这个当地律师，也就是 local agent， 是属于当地的这个agent 是他所有的这个递件呢都是要经过就是具有 local agent 执照的人才可以去处理的。那格林纳达呢，他是这个 Zenship 这个律师楼的这个主要负责人。那他从2014年的时候就开始对格林纳达项目做执业。那其实格林纳达在2013年的时候，这个公民项目在2013年的时候就已经有了是2013年这个格林纳达投资公民资格法所管辖的。那这个法案呢，这生效以来也经过多次的修订那无论是从开始或者是中间的这些补件还有到最后在做这个调查的时候，都是要按照法案的这个规定下来做申请的来做按照法案的规定下来行走的所以律师的职责就是确保一切都是在规则内规定内。
To assist you in the preparation of your applications, I think it's very important for us to understand Act. And so we will go through very briefly who can apply.
所以必须要在我们了解整个公民项目之前，我们必须从法律层面开始去了解。所以第一个呢，我们先让各位先知道了谁可以申请。那我们 PPT 就跳下一页啊。
Okay, so to qualify for citizenship under the Act, the main applicant must be at least 18 years old, in good health, and have funds to make the required investment. The main applicant is usually the head of the household, but spouses may also be the main applicant. For example, a wife may be the main applicant instead of a husband. The main applicant can apply for his or her dependents, and then who is a dependent is strictly defined under the Act.
所以首先呢，当然就是为了符合这个法案规定啊，主申请人必须是要成年的至少年满18岁，身体健康，而且必须有足够的资金来进行所需的投资。再来呢，申请人通常都是整个房子的整个家庭的这个户主不论是男是女就通常会是所谓的户主那也有可能是先生，或有可能是太太，然后是主要申请人那主要申请人他可以带着他的家属一起来做申请。
So a dependent can be a spouse of the main applicant, a child of the main applicant, or his or her spouse who is less than 18 years, a child of the main applicant or his or her spouse who is at least 18 years or less than 30 years, and who is fully supported by the main applicant or his or her spouse.
那主申请人就是应该说副申请人的话除了是主申请人的配偶之外他也可以是主申请人的配偶的这个18岁以下的子女或者是说如果子女已经超过18岁但是不满30岁的话，只要能够证明这个主申请这个孩子是由主申请人及配偶完全的抚养的话，那他也可以是包括在这个家属的定义当中。
You also have a child of the main applicant or the spouse of the main applicant who is at least 18 years and who is physically or mentally challenged and who is living with and fully supported by the main applicant. A parent or grandparent of the main applicant or his or her spouse above the age of 55 years and fully supported by the main applicant or his or her spouse.
如果主申请人或其配偶的这个子女年满18岁已经超过18岁了，但是不论是在身体上面或心理上面、精神上是有这个受到挑战的、有缺陷的那他们只要是主申请人跟与主申请人同住，并且得到完全的这个抚养的话，那也可以包括在这个副申请人当中。那另外呢，就是主申请人的这个配偶，还有对不起，主申请人及配偶的父母以及祖父母呢，只要法定年龄年满55岁而且是主申请人完全抚养的话，那也是可以包括在里面的。
And in recent times, Grenada has expanded the definition of the dependent to include a parent or grandparent of the main applicant or his or her spouse not exceeding or below 55 years and fully supported by the main applicant or his or her spouse, a sibling of the main applicant or his or her spouse, whether biological or adopted, who is at least 18 years old and single with no children.
Okay, 主申请人跟配偶
and a child born of the main applicant.
Sure. You can finish. Yeah, continue.
Should I
please.
continue? Yeah, a child of the main applicant or his or her spouse who was born within 12 months of the grant of citizenship pursuant to the Act.
主申请人跟其配偶的这个父母、祖父母年龄呢，只要是不论是这个只要低于55岁呢，并且这个由主申请人完全抚养的话其实也可以的这低于55岁的其实也是可以的。那另外的话就是关于兄弟姐妹主申请人及配偶不管是亲生或领养的这个兄弟姐妹，只要年满18岁，而且是单身没有子女的情况下这个兄弟姐妹也可以是 他的也可以是副申请人之一。那最后呢，就是主申请人及配偶呢，在这个获得这个按照该法获得公民身份后的12个月内所生的子女就是得到身份之后1年内生的子女也可以包括在里面。
It's important to note that the category that allows for a parent below 55 to apply, or for a sibling to apply, will attract additional fees. So it's important when you have your local agent to prepare a calculation that will take into account these special fees for these two categories.
OK， 这个其实是要强调说，如果是像后面2点讲的兄弟姐妹啊，或者是父母的这个祖父母这些特殊状况就是因为年龄的关系其实是可以包括在里面，但是它是有额外的费用产生的所以这也是为什么Sheila作为这个 local agent 呢，他的职责必须要善尽这个责任告诉你，他会帮你做计算详细的计算说如果你的家庭成员是符合什么条件的话，那他会需要额外增加多少的这个费用。
Okay, in Grenada, becoming a citizen of Grenada is actually something that the stakeholders, the government of Grenada, the CVI unit, see that citizenship to individuals should really only be granted to persons who are deserving of that honor. And so in Grenada, our act explicitly tells you who cannot be granted citizenship. And you will find that the due diligence in relation to applicants may be a little stricter than some of the other islands, but it is something that Grenada actually prides itself on having a due diligence that is rigid and a compliance regime that is mandatory.
Okay. 律师刚刚的意思就是说，格林纳达的这个公民法案呢，并不是其实简单来讲，就是并不是任何一个随便的申请人，任何一个没有经过调查的申请人都可以自由申请的为了保护这个本国人民和格林纳达这个国际地位政府他们只会向真正有资格的人这个授予这个公民这一项荣誉也因此就是接下来要进行的就是说，接下来如果会详细的解释说哪一些人呢是不符合条件的，那也按照法案上面其实是有非常多的这个细节那在整个申请过程当中可能申请人会发现国家对于这个定义规定呢越来越严格，但是政府对于这件事情并不其实是感到非常的骄傲的因为正因为有他们的严格的执行跟审查，所以才可以确保整个公民项目的顺利进行，还有国民的素质提高。
So the Act has a section that tells you the categories of listed where persons will not be approved for citizenship. So the first one is that a person provided false information on his application form, not having received a pardon at any time previously being convicted in any country of an offense for which the maximum custodial penalty for the same or similar offense in Grenada is in excess of 6 months imprisonment, is the subject of criminal investigation, is considered to be a potential national risk to Grenada or any country, is involved in any activity likely to cause disrepute to Grenada, or has been denied a visa to a country with which Grenada has visa-free travel and who has not subsequently obtained a visa to the country that issued the denial.
OK， 这边详细的列出了几点就是说以下这一些情况下呢，你是不允许成为这个格林纳达的公民的那除了就是第一个是在申请表上面提供这个虚假信息这个是绝对不可以的。那第二个是说，如果你本身是带有就是犯罪记录而且曾经呢 在任何一个国家被判处这个6个月以上的徒刑的罪行。那这个6个月以上的罪行，它的这个标准呢，同样也是格林纳达所认定的6个月以上的标准。所以就是说，你犯了这个罪严重到需要被判处6个月以上的这个标准呢，格林纳达也是不允许的这样子的申请人有这样子背景的申请人也是不能申请的。那第3个就是你是这个刑事调查的对象。那再来就是如果在经过这个调查的过程当中有发现呢，申请人是具有潜在的这个威胁国家安全的这个风险的话，那也是不行的。还有当然也就是如果会对这个名誉造成损害，对国家名誉造成损害有进行过相关的活动，这样子也是不可以的。那最后呢就是如果有曾经被这个格林纳达所免签的这些国家就是在取得格林纳达公民身份前有被格林纳达护照可以免签的这些国家给拒签过而且拒签过之后也没有被也没有重新获得这个拒签你的国家的签证的话这样子也是不行的。也就是说你曾经被拒签过，而且也从来没有复原过的这样子的这一类申请人也是不能被包括在申请案当中的。
It is therefore very important when you as agents are interviewing your potential applicants for Grenada citizenship that those applicants provide full and frank disclosure when being interviewed and completing their forms. Because we have seen in Grenada sometimes that an applicant could have his application denied, not just on the basis of what he himself may be involved in, but on the basis of what could be a negative report from a related party. So for example, a brother or a sister that is involved in some activity that, is illegal or criminal. So it's very important for you to request from applicants that they be, upfront, frank, and honest in their application process.
刚刚律师的意思是说，就是这个尽职调查报告，就是政府对客人所做的这个背景调查其实不包括是客人自己本身，就是申请人自己本身其他有关的人士就是包括最多发生的情况就是主申请人自己的家人比如说他刚刚提到的就是兄弟姐妹或者甚至是配偶父母等等的这家庭成员只要有任何这个损害国家利益或者是会对国家安全造成潜在威胁这一类的这个活动或者是有这样子的特质的其实都会连带的连累到这个主申请人。所以背景调查这件事情呢其实是很广泛的不是只有个人而已，不是只有针对个人而已还有包括整个家庭都有可能会产生影响所以是有可能因为这样的事情而被拒绝也就是说申请人呢在接受面试或者是填写这些表格的时候呢必须要充分的表达，应该要充分的将自己的所有的背景都完整的表现出来写出来披露出来。
Okay, so let's just look quickly at what would be required to apply. Clients will need to have a positive pre-screening or due diligence report. You have to complete your application forms, and of course the application forms are supported by the relevant documents that your local agent would advise you on. You'd have to execute your investment agreement if you're investing in a real estate project. Your payment of your prescribed fee for the submission of the application, your local agent to submit the application on your behalf.
所以接下来要谈到的是申请的话它需要的条件是什么，就是说应该是这个是比较属于针对文件的部分那是第一个呢肯定就是你需要通过所谓的这个背景调查而且背景调查要是通过的状态就是要所谓的正向结果那第二个当然就是填申请表那填申请表这件事情基本上是由我们公司来处理所以客人不必亲自去一个一个填写那再来的话是签署投资协议如果 如果申请格林纳达的方式是透过买房产的话，那签署这个房产的投资协议会是其中的一环文件准备的其中一环那当然相应的呢，在递交申请的时候也要支付这个规定的费用并且呢由本地代理就是我刚刚讲的这个 local agent 就是希腊本人去递交替申请人来递交申请这个是只有 local agent 有资格去做这件事情的。
Okay, I wanted to just point out to you as the agents that for those of you who process in more than one island, there might be some things that are peculiar to Grenada. As special as we have the E2 visa available and being the only Caribbean island that has that, we also have some things that are special and unique in terms of your application process.
接下来的话就是要讲的是主要是格林纳达的一些特点其实有很多的投资人他们申请格林纳达大部分是第一个想到的是因为有 E2 签证这个这一个特质就格林纳达唯一一个是加勒比海唯一一个可以做这样子签证的国家那当然待会我们会对 E2 签证做详细的了解那当然还有其他的就是在岛上格林纳达在生活上面在整个岛屿上面是其他国家所没有的特质我们接下来要做详细的说明。
Yes, so the first thing is our police certificates. And we have police certificates that are required for all the applicants except in the case of dependents who are under the age of 16. And the police certificates must be at least less than 6 months old. In recent times, because of COVID, we have had a change where the CBI is now allowing a police certificate to have a bit of an extended life. It's now extended to 9 months in cases where the police certificate doesn't bear a specific date. But the police certificate is required for each country where an applicant or his dependent have resided for more than 1 year over the 10-year period, which immediately precedes making an application.
第一就是格林纳达的这个文件准备当中呢，其中一个比较重要的是关于这个无犯罪记录警察证明不过我们都是在中国我们都称无犯罪记录嘛在除了这个16岁以下的申请人，就是未满16岁的这个受抚养人就是家属之外呢，其他的申请人都只要满16岁的都必须要提供这样子的这个证明无犯罪记录，16岁是一个门槛那这个警察证明呢，它必须是少于6个月在之前其实更长但是现在的话比较政策收紧所以规定要6个月以内那这个警察证明的意思呢，无犯罪记录的意思就是它要求的这个细节是关于说你在近10年内然后你居住超过1年的你居住在任何一个国家无论是中国或者是你有居住在其他国家也好，只要有超过1年那你就必须要针对当地的这个警察机关去做申请这样子的警察证明文件是无犯罪记录。所以不只是中国，如果你居住在国外的话，那你也是需要向国外的这个警察机构呢去申请这样子的记录的。
The second thing is that your source of funds for the investment must be provided, and this is a very important aspect of the application. The CBI unit and committee must be satisfied that the investment sum is legitimate. And so you can prove your source of funds from different things: bank statements, payment slip, job letters, documents to prove ownership in the company. These documents either must be original documents or certified copies and certified in accordance with the Act. And your bank statements must be for over a period of 1 year. In case where you have, maybe you're doing the investment through inheritance under will or trust, then you must provide the proof and the documents must be certified.
再来是讲到也是一个很重要的环节，就是资金来源如何证明资金来源呢？其实就是一切这个合规的 能够表现出你的资金流自己投资概况的所有文件那所以这可能就包括了这个银行对账单工资单、求职信等等的公司证书、公司注册文件股份证书还有这个经过审计的财务报表或者是能够证明某个商业活动的文件资产房地产持有情况或者是已经处置的这个证明继承或者甚至是这个家族信托证明这些都是可以包括在里面的所以这些文件呢，它是必须根据这个法案要求所做的这个公证或者是经过公证的副本或者是原件就是或者副本，这些都是要提交的。
Another feature that is special to Grenada is in terms of our passport pictures. I mean, and this is something that your local agent will assist you with, but there's special requirements in terms of how the passport pictures should be done, both for your certificate and eventually the passport that your applicant will have. Most importantly, the forehead and your ears must be visible.
再来的话就是关于护照页的这个提供那主要呢关于护照的这个照片护照上面的这个照片的提供呢，其实详细的规定有很多已经写在这个屏幕上面了不过最重要的重点呢是关于说你的额头跟你的耳朵必须要露出来那其他的话呢就是我们相信就是之后文件跟文件在对接的时候会做详细的，我们都可以提供 sample 的。
There is another thing that we need to talk about, which involves the sponsorship of applications. So an application can be sponsored by somebody who's not part of the application. That person is called a benefactor or sponsor. Usually what you do is that an affidavit is prepared stating why the benefactor, the sponsor, desires to pay for the main applicant. So it could be a family member. I have had a case we had a manager apply for an employee. The benefactor's spouse, however, is subject to due diligence. And so there are documents that they would have to put in just as if they're applying, and of course there are the payment of the fees. But someone other than you can sponsor your application. So your mother, your father, a sibling.
OK， 所以这一点呢是针对这个透过赞助人来替主申请人递交申请的也就是说主申请人不一定是要付钱的那个人不一定是付钱的那个人，他可以是透过他的朋友、亲朋好友、家人等等的来替主申请人支付这一个申请的费用就是整个的费用。那这种人就被称作赞助人或者是捐助人就是但是呢，这个赞助人呢，必须要签署一份这个宣誓书，应该说是一个声明那声明书里面呢，必须要详细列明呢，应该说要写明为什么他要替主申请人付这个款项主申请人及其家属付这个款项那同时呢作为付款的这个人呢，你也必须要接受这个背景调查尽职调查那还有这个相关的这个费用的支付。所以这个申请人可以是你的这个兄弟姐妹也可以是你的朋友，也可以是你的家人这样子。大部分情况下都是家人。像刚刚律师解释到的，就是说，如果你的孩子呢是一个银行高管那就是收入比较高的，那可以去替这个申请人做这件事情，他就可以在声明书里面写明他的原因。
It's also important to note that in Grenada, even though you're married, you can apply without your spouse being part of the application. But the CBI unit will require due diligence to be done on your non-applicant spouse. And so that non-applicant spouse is required to provide documentation to support, even though they're not applying, but they are required to provide passport and certain other documents so that due diligence checks can be made on them.
OK， 这边的话，这个比较特殊哦，就是关于主申请人啊，还有他的配偶。如果主申请人他只打算自己申请，但是他没有要让自己的配偶也申请，就是说配偶在作为不是申请人的情况下呢，其实也是要接受背景调查的，这个是比较特殊的状况哦。那详细的这个背景调查呢，我们会在文件的准备当中呢，去做详细的说明啊。
Minor children. The children who are under 16 in Grenada for the purposes of the Act have certain things that are peculiar to them. And so it's important for you to note. So there's no due diligence. The main applicants can sign their forms. When you do get an approval, both parents are required to sign the oath of allegiance. Father must sign your passport application. And if the parents are separated or divorced, we must provide legal documentary evidence of custody, or the consent affidavit is required, stating that one parent is okay with the child becoming a Grenada citizen.
其实这一点前面提过就是说16岁以下的儿童是不需，就是被视为未成年儿童，所以在这种情况下是没有尽职调查的不需要做背景调查。那主申请人呢，必须替这个儿童在这个表格上面签字父母双方呢也要签署这个效忠誓词替孩子签署就是作为孩子的这个监护人那当然也要同意这个作为父亲的话必须要同意这个孩子取得护照并在这个护照表格上面签字说明那再来最后一个情况就是，如果父母是分居或者是离婚的情况下呢那则需要提供这个监护权的法律证明证据或者是同意书来同意说这个孩子是可以做这个我同意他做这个投资公民法。
And the expiration of documents, it's important to also pay attention to the life of the documentation. And this slide really has some information that we need to update a bit. The police certificates generally have a life of 6 months. But in this time, due to the challenges we've been having with obtaining documents because of the COVID-19, this period has now been extended to 9 months from the date of issue, except where a specified date is identified for validity in the document. The HIV test usually has to be done 3 months before you put in your Form 4, but now the CBI office has actually extended to 6 months from the date of testing. We still have the original reference and bank reference and having a life of 6 months.
接下来是这个档案的期限就是说，如果你是申请无犯罪记录的话呢，无犯罪记录的效期一般是6个月，但是因为最近1年来这个疫情所造成的这个影响所以很多人在申请无犯罪记录的时候时间会被延后，所以政府呢也有在打算之后呢将这个6个月的效期呢变成9个月，也就是说如果你能够提交9个月内的无犯罪记录，这个也是可以合规的。再来是 HIV 检验HIV 检验的话按照这个 PPT 上面写的是你必须要是3个月内做出来的那但是也因为疫情的影响时间也放宽到6个月也就是说之后呢会在可以放宽到6个月内做出来的 HIV 检测，这样子也是可以的那至于这个银行的资信证明呢，这个是一定要6个月以内的6个月以内的有效期。
At the bottom of this slide, we will note that if there's any document that the client is unable to provide, you have to provide an affidavit that explains why. I think it's important for us to just note that. And the CBI will then exercise its discretion as to whether it would accept it or not. Okay?
那页的最下面就是说，如果你提供不出文件的话，你必须要提供一个声明书详细说明原因。那这个政府呢会决定是否要接受你的这个声明。
In my practice as a local agent, I've just put together a few questions that I find I get asked very often in terms of Grenada citizenship. What is the life of the passport? A passport is issued for a period of 5 years. And after that 5-year period, the passport has to be renewed. This is in existence for all citizens. It's not unique to our CBI citizens. For me as a local, I also have a passport that expires within 5 years.
律师现在提出了一些 Q&A 的这个常见问题啊，就是他在从业这一段时间以来啊，最常被问到的几个问题啊。那我们从上面开始看啊，首先是护照效期啊，第一个、第二个一起讲，护照效期还有护照更新的时间啊，一般来说所有的这个护照效期都是5年啊，那所以更新的时间也是在5年之后，就是你护照到期后去更新嘛。这个不是只有适用于这个投资公民的申请人啊，其实是包括当地出生的所有的人啊，护照都是一样的啊，并没有因为你不是当地出生而做出区别。好，那过程很简单，就是申请表啊规定的费用啊，把旧的护照还有2张的护照照片提出来，好，那没有必要本人出现在格林纳达，就可以直接换护照了。
So the renewal process is very simple. It's done after 5 years. You do not need to be in Grenada to have your passport renewed. You fill up a form and you pay the prescribed fees, and it can be done at various consulate offices or embassies throughout the world, or the documentation can be sent to Grenada to your local licensed agent for assistance.
所以护照的更新呢，其实刚刚提到的很简单嘛，就是费用啊，还有照片和旧护照提供出来之后呢，也不需要在格林纳达的当地啊，也可以在全世界的任何一个格林纳达的大使馆或领事馆啊去递交这个申请，就可以直接透过这样的方式取得更新自己的新的护照。那当然护照呢，如果本人不方便去领取的话，也可以是委托给这个具有资格的这个代理呢去代替客户去做领取的。
I know for clients, sometimes investors are interested in having another ID. Currently, there's no other ID issued to applicants under the Citizenship by Investment Program. It's something that I know the government and the CBI unit is looking into as an option, but currently there's no other ID. I mean, applicants are free to visit Grenada over time and obtain a driver's license, but it requires you to actually visit Grenada. So this is something that may be coming soon. Another ID might soon be available.
那第3个就是问说有没有身份证啊？就是除了护照之外呢，还有没有格林纳达当地的身份证啊？答案是没有啊，因为根据当前的这个公民法案呢，其实是没有向申请人去颁发这个其他的身份证的。当然，其他的如果是像是驾照的话，其实也是可以欢迎客户呢到格林纳达去取得，但是这个条件就是你必须本人到格林纳达一趟，才可以有办法去申请驾照的。
Right. I just wanted as well to point out, because sometimes we have this issue, maybe not necessarily for China, but we still in Grenada do not recognize common law marriages, gay marriages, or polygamous marriages. And so none of these are recognized within the definition of a spouse.
第4点的话，其实比较对中国的话是比较没有这个影响，但是还是可以拿出来讲一下啊。就是在格林纳达的法律当中呢，同性婚姻啊，或者是多配偶制的这个婚姻是不被承认的，所以在这2者的婚姻情况下，配偶呢是不被承认为这个配偶的定义的啊。格林纳达的对配偶的定义的。
We know something that's unique to some jurisdictions, and I think China is one of these, is that sometimes it's not possible for there to be a notary public to notarize documents. And the CBI committee has put together exceptions where there are no notaries. In some cases, attorneys at law are allowed, and in some cases, other functionaries that may be identified by the government. So in putting together your application and in dealing with your local agent, if you have those challenges, it should be discussed, and then alternatives would be looked at in terms of having documents notarized.
这个的话可能对中国也不是那么适用，因为中国有非常多的公证处这他的意思是说，在准备文件的过程当中，如果有需要经历到公证就是也需要到公证处去但是你所在的当地是没有任何公证处的公证办公室的话，那这个情况怎么办呢？其实是可以跟这个律师来进行讨论的因为格林纳达政府其实有针对这个没有公证处的这个地区有做一定程度的这个例外也就是说，你可以以委托律师的方式就具有公证资格的这个律师楼去来完成这样子的程序不过这个的话，具体还是要看主申请人来自于哪一个国家来自于哪一个地区这个地区是因为什么原因遇到这样的挑战没有公证处这样子的问题可以另外进行讨论。
Another question that is raised is who can take the fingerprints, because we do have a Form 2 now in Grenada that requires applicants to be fingerprinted. And the CBI committee has indicated that this must either be a police officer who may have fingerprint experts, or in some countries where this may pose a challenge, you can also have an attorney at law take your fingerprints. But once again, your local agent will guide you in terms of your preparation of the application should your clients have any challenges in having the fingerprints taken.
OK， 关于谁可以采集客户的指纹呢？一般来说都是当地的这个就是政府官员就是你在申请过程当中，你在最后需要采集指纹的时候，应该说是当这个警察机构会有这个采集指纹这个部门的专家来进行采集。那在某些特殊情况下呢，有可能是这个授权的律师可以去这么做。但是无论如何呢，这些都是这个律师他作为 local agent 他的工作就是负责引导客户呢在什么样的条件下采集指纹然后去完成整个表格的填写跟申请这样子。
So in closing, I just wanted to say that the process for the Grenada Citizenship by Investment One, it's not a difficult process provided that the rules are followed. The processing time has been extended a bit because of the challenges, because of the COVID in terms of the due diligence sometimes completed. But we've seen an improvement generally in terms of the delivery of the product, given now that the filing of applications are now electronic. And so while we're able to get our applications in a lot faster, due to the pandemic, it has slowed down in some cases the delivery of a final outcome. So generally your applications would take probably 60 to 90 business days. Now, because of the pandemic, maybe a little bit longer. But the process is not a difficult one. The due diligence is strict. And as I said before, Grenada prides itself on that. But we look forward to welcoming your clients and more applicants to Grenada in 2021. I'm sure from the pictures you've seen, Grenada is a beautiful island, and we hope that we can provide as an alternative, a second passport to some of your clients who may be considering it for whatever reason, if it's just a second home or, as you would hear from Robert, the advantages that can be offered from the E2 visa. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Shayla.
我刚刚翻译一下律师刚刚讲的话啊，就是说，格林纳达目前的审理时间呢，就是因为疫情的关系，所以有稍微的延长。不过具体来讲，还是会在3个月左右，就是大概是60天到90天左右可以完成整个的程序啊。但是也许会稍微长一点啊，因为现在的话，关于疫情呢所遭遇到的挑战呢，其实很大部分是落在背景调查这一部分啊，因为背景调查其实是需要这个相关公司去做这个更详细的这个去做更详细的这个调查，所以会有人员移动的这个风险。但是无论如何呢，还是尽量会在3个月之内完成整个流程。整个流程呢，其实大概是从递交背景调查，然后到这个寄送文件，还有政府批准，还有寄送文件，整个过程呢，其实多少还是会受到一点影响啊。那当然政府批准这件事情其实是很快的啊，主要还是落在背景调查这一部分。好，再来的话，很多申请人对格林纳达这个身份的这个定义呢，其实他们对于这个身份的定位呢，其实每个人想法不一样啊。有的是针对是为了E2去做的啊，有的是为了把它当做第2个家啊，是真实要去居住的啊。那当然也有的是只是为了就是一个身份作为如果发生什么事情会有一个避风港来做一个预备的啊。但是无论如何呢，格林纳达都会是一个非常有价值的这个申请方式啊，所以也非常欢迎大家到格林纳达申请格林纳达的这个公民啊。那我们今天的格林纳达的介绍到这里，谢谢。
Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you， 谢谢。
那我们现在呢是这样子的，我跟大家说明一下，因为刚刚有朋友反映，就是目前在手机的会议系统里面，它是没有办法留言提问。不过我们已经经过测试，是可以如果有进入电脑的话，进入会议系统是可以留言的。那假如说还是不行的话呢，可以就是联系我们的北京、上海跟广州各个分区的经理，好，把问题呢转给我们。好，关于 Sheila 这边的话呢，有大概最后一个问题，我觉得也是很多的朋友希望想要问 Sheila 的，就是说，如果因为这个我们在别的国家呢其实非常的明确，但是在格林纳达的部分一直都不是很清楚，所以呢，就是如果一个申请人他在申请了拿到护照以后，是否可以再加入原有的配偶跟原有没有申请的小孩子进入到这个申请当中？对，我们是想要问这个问题。
Sheila, we have one question for you. All right, so the question is, if the applicant applies individually, or the applicant is married, and once the applicant obtains a passport, can he or she add additional, like add the spouse and the children afterward?
You can add a child to your CBI applicant if that child is born within 12 months of you obtaining your citizenship certificate. You can. And that can happen under the Citizenship by Investment Act. If you obtain your Grenada passport and subsequently you get married, you do have the possibility of adding your spouse later. Under another act that's called the Citizenship Act. But I must indicate that this process takes a much longer time. It's not as quick as under the Citizenship by Investment Act. But it is possible for you to have your spouse added later by virtue of marriage.
OK， 我解释一下啊，就是说，在这个投资公民法 CBI 投资公民法当中是没有这样子的法案的。也就是说，如果我们单看 CBI 投资公民法的话，是没有这个是不能加入配偶及孩子的，除非你的孩子是12个月内出生，就是取得护照后的12个月内出生。但是呢，按照当地的法案呢，刚刚律师讲的是 Citizenship Act 我们叫做公民法啊，这个是当地的法案。如果根据当地法案的话，是有可能可以加入这个申请人，就是配偶跟孩子的。所以在这个情况下，但是在这个情况下，时间会拉得比较长可能会到6个月甚至到1年的时间。所以这个是等于说是它是走另外一个法律途径不是走投资公民法，而是走当地的这个公民法去做去操作的。所以有可能，但是是要走另一个途径。
OK，Thank you, Sheila. Actually, we needed to go to the next step of introducing the E2 programs. Yeah. So thank you very much for today's attending. And I think you can, because it's already very late in Grenada, so you may turn off the line, or if you want to still stay here, it's also very welcome.
Thank you, Fanny. Thank you.
Thank you. 好，那我们接下来呢，就进入到邀请我们的 E2 的律师，哈，就是 Mr. Robert Lubin. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how are you? 你好。
Yeah. Thank you for waiting. I think you waiting a long time, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I learned a lot about Grenada. I enjoyed that presentation. That was very good, very informative.
Okay. Andy is also here, so he will translate for you. So please,
Hey.
your presentation.
Mr. Lubin.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, buddy. So,
How you doing, man?
yeah, good. It's pretty late your time, so let's just get this ball rolling. And
Okay, let's get the ball rolling, man.
yeah.
So, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you, and we also have
Okay.
the presentation here.
Okay, that's fine. So, my name is Robert Lubin. I've been doing immigration for over 30 years. I'm originally from Canada myself. I immigrated to the United States by going to school here. I got an F visa. I got an H-1B visa. I eventually got a green card, and I eventually became a citizen. I've been working with Raymond and Andy, and they probably won't like me saying this, but since the mid-1990s, so 25 years. And we've done a lot of different kinds of immigration together very successfully. We've had a wonderful cooperation, have been good friends and business partners for many, many years. So I appreciate that. And I'm glad to talk about the E2 visa today, which is a little bit different than some of the things we've worked on in the past. Andy, do you want to take it away from there?
Yeah, 25 years has been a pain, but all right， 所以那个先跟我们刚刚律师 Robert 已经跟大家稍微自我介绍一下他自己的个人背景哦。那因为他的背景也是比较特殊的，他本身的话他是在加拿大出生，那后来他是移民到了美国哦，所以他一开始的话他是以学生签证哦 F1 的签证，就后来转成工作签证 H1B。哦，就到一直最终取得到这个美国的这个公民身份。哦，那因为这个 Robert 跟我们之间的配合哦，是一个很长期的一个配合啦。哦，因为从1990年开始哦，我们双方呢就一直在各个不同的这个美国移民方面哦的这个业务呢哦有这个长期的一个往来。哦，所以合作的都是非常愉快哦。那 Robert 他本身也是一个非常具有这个经验的移民律师哦，在我们的业界的话呢，也算是有一定的名望哦。所以他今天的话呢，就要跟各位稍微介绍一下我们关于这个 E2 的这个项目哦。那因为 E2 的这个签证的话呢，跟一般大家所熟悉的这个移民签证可能稍微有一些不一样的地方哦，所以我们希望今天借由这个Robert 的协助呢哦，来让各位更了解哦，到底这个 E2 的这个签证呢哦是要进行如何的来做取得。Robert, go ahead.
So just so everybody knows, I work in many categories. Generally the EB1, EB2, EB3, EB5. We do L's, we do H's, we do J waivers. But for today, we're going to discuss the E2 visa. The E2 visa is a little bit different than the other visas. All the other ones, which I was talking about a second ago, are for immigration. They're for permanent residency visas. The E2 is not a permanent residency visa. The E2 is essentially a temporary visa, but it's an interesting temporary visa because you can keep it going for the rest of your life. So while it is not a green card or permanent residency, you could literally live permanently in the United States with an E2 visa. And one of the reasons some people might prefer the E2 visa over others are, one, EB5 is very expensive and some people don't want to invest so much money or don't have as much money to do an EB5. And then secondly, a lot of people want to avoid worldwide taxation, and the E2 can help them do that.
对，那我们今天跟各位介绍的这个 E2 的部分哦，那跟大家比较平常了解到的哦，像是 EB1、EB2、EB3 哦，甚至 我们过去一直都很热门的这个 EB5 哦，还有是 L1 哦或者 H1B 哦，这些我们都有在进行哦。但是 E2 的话跟这些类别呢是有一个最大的不同的地方就是在于说 E2 它是一个非这个永居身份的一个签证哦，因为刚刚大家讲到的这些其他类别你最后都可以透过一定的步骤来申请取得到这个永居的身份但是 E2 的话呢，它是一个非 PR 的签证那虽然说它是一个非 PR 你可以把它想象成是一个临时的一个居留的一个签证。但它的好处的话呢，就是 E2 它可以无限的一直延续下去一直重新 renew， 一直重新的来做申请所以 E2 的话你是可以永久的来做持有那另外呢，很多人他会选择做 E2， 而不是选择像是 EB5 那我们举个例子来做比较那有一个很大的原因是，当然 EB5 你是需要进行一个比较大金额的一个投资所以你的投资金额，你所付出的这个成本开销可能会稍微比较多那另外一点的话呢，就是因为 E2 它是一个非移民签证嘛它是非永居的一个签证所以它是可以避掉美国的这个全球征税的这样子一个制度因为你并不是美国的这个永居的一个身份所以很多人他可能还偏向于这个持有 E2 的身份因为它是不需要暴露在这个美国的全球征税的这样制度的下面。
So people ask, how do I get an E2? And next screen, how do I change the screen here?
I'll do it for you.
Okay, so the next question is, how do I get an E2 visa? So the most important component of getting an E2 visa is you have to invest in a business. So your business can either be a startup, in other words, you have an idea and you want to go and open a brand new business in the United States, or maybe you buy an existing business, or maybe you buy a franchise. Our experience is that it's very difficult to convince the consulate to approve your E2 visa if it's just an idea, if it's just a new business with a startup. And that's because so many people who apply for the E2 visa do not actually complete their plan. So the Immigration Service would like to hedge their bets and really look for people who are going to put forth a plan that is most likely to be executed. So we find that either buying an existing business, or if you're going to start a new business, at least buying into a franchise, which has a proven business model, are your best chances for success, not just with the business, but also with the E2 visa application. And then another key component of the business is the people who are investing to get the E2 visa, you must have 51% owned either by one person from the treaty country or a collection of people from the same treaty country. And that person must be a key manager or executive of the business. I send it to you, Andy.
对，所以我们先讲说到底怎么样的来申请这个 E2 的签证那 E2 签证的话，第一个也是最重要的一个步骤，就是你是必须要进行一个投资的行为那你是投资在一个你可以是做一个 startup 一个新的一个想法，一个新的一个全新的一个企业。那你也可以呢是投资到一个购买已经存在的一个企业或者是第三种方式是购买并且加入到一个这个加盟的一个已经存在的一个加盟商这样子的一个系列旗下那依照我们律师过去的经验来讲的话呢他是比较不建议这个进行这个 startup 就是一个全新的一个企业的投资当中原因是因为呢在这个领事馆在做面试的时候，他们对于这种新的企业呢，到底是否是可以真正的你的想法确实最终会达到实现你的企业是真的可以开得起来他们是保持着比较怀疑的一个态度所以对于 E2 签证的一个申请的话，你如果是一个新的企业全新的一个想法，全新的一个投资，这个在领事馆方面的话可能会遇到比较大的一个挑战所以一般呢 我们的律师呢，他会比较建议的就是，进行来购买一个已经存在的企业哦，或者是加入到一个加盟商哦，加入到一个加盟的这个产业当中哦，因为这个加盟产业它有一定的商业计划，过去它有一定的商业模式是已经存在了哦，那这一些的话呢，一方面是可以让我们的投资呢是更有这个成功的可能性哦，那另外一方面也是对于 E2 签证的申请哦，在领事馆这边的话哦，会看起来比较友好一些哦。那另外一点很重要的就是你要投资要拥有到一个企业当中的话哦，你是必须要这个占有51%哦，也就是绝大公司的这个股份哦。那这51%的股份呢，你可以是一个人哦来做持有。哦，那或者呢，你是一群的投资人哦，一个以上的投资人，但是是来自于同样的这个有 E2 的 treaty 哦，就是国与国之间有这个 E2 协议哦，这个贸易协定的这个国家，你同样的申请人来自于同样的这个国家哦，加入到一个企业当中哦，那成为这个管理者哦，这样子的一个角色哦，那你也是可以符合申请 E2 的标准。Robert?
So question becomes, why is the E2 a good visa to choose? So there are several factors to look at, as you can see on this screen. First of all, the process doesn't take very long compared to other visas. Usually from the time we start a case until the visa is given is going to be about 4 months, maybe 5. Obviously, a lot depends on how quickly we can get the information from you in order to submit your case. But either way, it's not a long process. There's no fixed amount that you have to invest. You know, people know about the EB5, which they know is now $900,000. But the E2 is kind of a mystery because the rules say it really has to be sufficient. There's strange language, but nothing that really tells you how much. But our experience is if somebody invests around $200,000, that should be sufficient as long as that amount is enough to actually open the business. So that's a big difference. There's no specific employee requirement. Again, the language is kind of subjective. It says it's supposed to employ US people, but it doesn't say how many people. So again, using EB5 as an example, everybody knows that a person who invests in the EB5 has to account for at least 10 new jobs. In E2, you don't have this rule, but you probably want to create at least 2 or 3 jobs. And in the businesses we usually are working with, there's usually quite a bit more jobs than that. Now, any business can work, but again, you go back to that issue I talked about initially. You know, it's got to be a business which the government is going to believe is really going to happen. And it has to sort of employ some people, so it couldn't just be a one-person company by yourself. Now, who can come with you? When you get the E2 visa, your spouse and children under 21 can join you with the E2 visa. Now, here's a little difference between a permanent residency visa and this E2 visa. If you get a permanent resident visa and your spouse and children under 21 join you in the case, once everybody becomes a permanent resident, they will stay a permanent resident. However, with the E2 visa, the children must be under 21. And since this is a constant non-immigrant visa, this means at some point a child will reach 21. And if they do reach 21, they can no longer continue under their parents' E2 visa. So if a family is looking to do the E2 visa, they probably want their children to be educated in the US so that they can get a student visa and then branch off with that student visa to get their own immigration sorted out down the road. As I previously mentioned, there is no specific limitation on how long the E2 visa is for. It will usually be approved from anywhere from 2 to 5 years, but it can be renewable as often as you want, as long as the business in which you first started and which the E2 is based remains active and the business person also remains active in the business. And then finally, one of the more important points of the E2 visa is there is no worldwide taxation. As people know, if you become a U.S. green card holder or a citizen, your worldwide income is subject to U.S. taxation. Now, that's not as bad as it sounds, because if you are earning money in another country and pay tax there, you do get a 100% tax credit back. But the E2 visa really just gets by this whole issue by only taxing the money that you make in the United States. So these are reasons why an E2 visa could be good for you.
All right. 对，那我们现在下一页我们这边来探讨的就是为什么要来做这个E2 签证的申请哦。E2 签证到底对我们申请人来讲的话是有什么样的好处？那第一个阶段的话，当然就是它的审理速度的话，那是很快的哦。它相对来讲比较其他的这个签证的取得的话，哦，它是相对比较快速哦。我们大概以过去经验来讲的话，大概是4个月左右的时间就可以完成整个申请哦。那中间当然有一个要素就是我们多快的律师可以取得到我们申请人的资料哦，你可能要做这些资料的方面的一些准备哦，但是一般通常的话大概是4个月左右的时间哦，我们就可以完成这个 E2 签证的一个取得哦。那再来的话呢，就是投资金额的要求哦。那我们都知道说 EB5 哦，现在 EB5 涨价了之后，我们是最低你如果是在这个TEA 的区域的话，你是90万哦，最低限额嘛哦，就是最低金额的一个投资哦。但对于 E2 来讲的话呢，它的最低投资金额的要求哦，或者说投资金额到底是否是要多少，一直都是一个谜团呐哦，因为它在法令上面的文字上面的叙述的话，它是写说需要有足够的投资哦，那到底足够的定义是多少呢？哦，那它是没有特别的标示清楚哦，但是依照我们过去的经验来看，我们律师的经验来看的话呢，大概是在20万美元左右哦，就应该可以被认定为是足够可以来开启设立投资到一个企业当中那另外呢就业机会方面的话呢它也是有一定的要求，但是并不像 EB5 一样因为 EB5 大家都知道要有10个就业机会的雇用来满足一个EB5 的申请人但是 E2 的话，它也没有明确的写出来，你是要雇佣多少人它只有提到说你是要雇佣这个美国人那我们的一般的认知的话呢，认为大概是雇佣2至3个工作机会应该就是可以足够了。因为 E2 它另外一个看重的就是你到底是要有多少个工作机会可以来在你所成立你所投资的这个行业来讲的话是符合这个市场上面的标准是可以来让这个商业可以运行所以我们认为2到3个就业机会那应该是可以满足它对于就业的这个要求的一个条件那另外的话呢E2 可以带什么样的申请人呢那除了主申请人以外的话配偶还有21岁以下的这个子女你是可以一起携带的但是跟这个永居的签证来做比较，跟绿卡签证的话呢，它是有一个很大的不同因为我们在做 EB5 的时候，我们知道你申请绿卡，你是可以带你的配偶，还有21岁以下的这个子女那大家都会在同一时间的这个取得到这个绿卡的身份但 E2 的话，因为它是一个非移民签证所以它是可以携带配偶和21岁以下的子女，不过子女一旦超过21岁以上的话他就不可以再持续的持有这个 E2 的这个签证所以我们一般的话会建议说如果说一开始的话，我们是以这个21岁以下的这个子女，他是取得到这个 E2 的签证，那我们可能到美国了之后，你可能是会去念书小孩子的话，他就会以这个 F1 的签证取得到这个读书的这个签证。那之后的话呢看是转向工作签证还是什么样其他的签证类别来延续这个子女继续可以留在这个美国境内因为 E2 的话它是只包含21岁以下的这个子女的那对于这个E2 的你可以持有 E2 签证的这个时间它刚刚如同律师所说的它没有任何的一个时间限制在 那一般你会得到的 E2 的这个批准签证，大概是落在2年至5年的一个签证的有效期但是你签证到期了之后呢，你是可以无限制的一直延期的申请下去那只要你这个生意还是维持的持续在运作只要你这个商业还是有维持的在经营并且你个人也有主动性的参与在这个商业当中那你都是可以一直延续你的这个 E2 的签证那最后提到一点就是也是刚刚有讲到的E2 它是没有这个美国的这个全球征税的制度因为它并不是一个 PR 的签证那虽然刚刚 Robert 也有提到说，虽然 PR 你是美国的居民你是要这个征求美国的这个税，但是也没有想象中的那么的恐怖啦因为你在海外其他地方你所缴的税都是可以这个在美国的税上面可以有互相的这个抵扣额在的但是 E2 的话你是完全不需要这个顾虑到这个美国全球征税的这个问题。Robert.
So we've heard the good things about E2. Are there any negative things about E2? Well, not really. E2 doesn't really have any negatives, but there are a few things you just need to be aware of. First of all, you have to come from a country which the U.S. accepts as a treaty country for E2. The list is over 120 countries. Grenada is one. Taiwan is one. There are many countries that are on the list. Second, I mentioned earlier that when your child turns 21, that child will lose his or her E2 status, but that person could go to school and get the F1 visa and essentially start at that point there and continue their immigration journey. Because the visa is only given to you for 2 to 5 years, this means you're going to have to reapply for it every 2 to 5 years. So that's something you just have to be aware of. As long as you own the business, and as long as you are active as an executive or manager in the business, you will continue to be able to renew the E2 without a problem. And then, however, you must keep that business in operation. If the business stops being in operation, your E2 life is over. And finally, there is no direct road to a green card by an E2. Now, there may be ways you can get a green card by activities somehow related to your business. For example, maybe you've invested so much money in it at some point, you can get an EB-5. Or maybe you've developed something and can qualify in another category. But the E2 itself, unlike some other non-immigrant visas, is not going to be a pathway to a green card. So that's your short list of things you need to be aware of and challenges to the E2.
好，所以我们说到底 E2 有没有什么缺点应该不能说是说有这个缺点或者是缺陷但是有一些地方关于这个 E2 签证的话，我们还是希望提醒大家是需要注意的地方那第一个的话就是你到底能不能符合申请这个 E2 的签证那 E2 的签证的话呢，是美国与120个国家它有这个贸易的这个协定那这些国家的话呢的公民他才可以申请这个美国的这个 E2 签证所以首先第一点的话是要确认说到底国与国之间你本身所持有的这个身份是不是符合这个有跟美国有这个贸易的 treaty 的这个关系的这个存在那像如同刚刚我们一开始第一部分的演讲这个格瑞纳达的这个项目那格瑞纳达国家呢和美国是有这个 E2 的这个 treaty 的存在所以格瑞纳达的公民是可以来申请 E2 的签证那还有像是一些其他的亚洲国家的话，当然还是可以符合不过中国的申请人中国的公民的话是和美国是没有这样子的一个条例在所以必须就要取得到另外一个国家的身份，好比说像刚刚讲的格瑞纳达的这个公民的身份之后我们才可以来申请 E2 的签证那第二点需要注意的就是刚刚也提到的21岁以下的这个子女是可以包含在申请当中但是21岁以上的他是不可以再持续的持有 E2 的签证 所以我们必须要为他考量到透过其他的方式像是刚刚所讲的学生签证或者说未来再用什么样的一个其他签证的一个转换来让他持续的持有这个美国的有效身份在。第三个部分的话呢，就是E2 签证的话，你是2到5年的这个有效期那你是可以一直 reapply 一直重新的来做申请，一直重新的 renew一直让这个签证可以延续下去不过它就是要有一个延续的一个 renew 这样子的一个过程在所以这一点的话也是要注意。那 renew 延续签证的有效它的延续申请的一个条件，当然就在于说你所投资的这个商业你是确实的有在营运并且你是有它的定义是主动性的有在这个经营营运下去因为一旦你一开始所投入的这个企业你所投资的这个企业它没有经营的话你的它停止运作了你的 E2 是没有办法再得到续钱的所以你的商业行为的话是必须的要一直持续的下去。那最后一点的话也是要提到就是刚刚一开始所讲到的E2 它不是一个移民的签证，它没有一个直接的渠道可以从 E2 转换成为绿卡的身份但是它事实上是有一些间接的做法好比说你在做你这个 E2 的投资，你所投资进去的金额可能最终有一天到达了这个符合 EB5 的这个数字那你是可以将你所投资的这个企业未来是作为 EB5 的一个可能是直投的一个申请所以事实上是在法令上面的话是可行的从 E2 的签证你投资金额一定满足到 EB5 的最低限制的条件是可以最终转换申请为 EB5 但是我们刚才讲的就是E2 的本身的话它是没有办法最终会变成自己会变成绿卡那一定是要靠着其他的渠道来获得到这个永居的一个身份。
So what do you need to do to get an E2? Well, first of all, you need to be from a treaty country, as I said before. You must be actively investing at least $200,000 into the business. The business in which you invest must be real and either operating, or you have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it will be operating shortly. You need to be a manager or an executive because you need to come to the US to help develop and direct the enterprise. And here's an odd one. You must express an intent to leave the United States after the visa ends. The reason I say it's a bit of an odd requirement is because you're also allowed to just keep reapplying for the rest of your life to renew it. So on one hand, you have to express, hey, I'm just doing this temporarily and I want to leave eventually, but I'll extend it as long as I feel like it. So it's a strange requirement. It's one which people, kind of follow, not exactly, but you do have to express that intent. So these are the elements of applying for the visa.
好，我们说所以申请 E2 的话，我们对于一个申请人来讲的话他需要符合什么样的条件那刚刚有提到的第一条就是你是要跟 E2 之间你的国家是符合这个贸易协定的这个条约的这个国家所以刚刚已经讲到说像格瑞那达的话它是可以符合这样子的一个申请的一个背景所以这个是第一点也是最重要的一点那第二点的话呢是你必须要做出投资的行为那我们认为最低的话是在20万美元这样子的一个投资的一个金额的一个项目第三点的话呢就是生意它一定是要是一个真实的一个生意它并且或是已经在营运当中的一个生意或者是即将要运行的一个生意所以这些的话是必须要提出证明的再来呢你在这个企业当中你是要扮演着执行者的角色或者是管理经理级别的一个角色因为你是必须要自己这个可以入境到美国境内管理这个透过取得 E2 的身份入境到美国境内管理你所投资的这个企业所以这个也是要 进行证明的。那再来最后一点的话呢，也是一个比较奇特的一个条件在就是因为 E2 它是一个非移民的签证所以你必须要证明说你的意向是这个签证是短暂的你只是短暂透过 E2 的签证入境到美国的境内短暂的这个居住在美国但你迟早有一天你是会离境美国的那为什么说这个是有点奇怪的地方？因为 E2 的签证不是可以无限制的一直延续的申请一直 renew 下去吗那好像这样是互相有抵触但是因为 E2 的签证它是一个非移民的一个签证所以他们的要求就是你必须你的意向要表现出来的意向是你不会这个不离开美国你是有一天你还是会离境美国的所以这一条的话呢也是这个必须要符合这个 E2 的一个申请。
Back to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. So people ask me, okay, I want to do it. I want to invest $200,000. But what if I invested $200,000 and I don't get approved? What happens? Which is a good question. Nothing in life is guaranteed. You should be approved, but who knows? And for the person who's trying to decide, even if you've had 100 people in a row approved, they're afraid they're going to be the first to not be approved. So there is a solution to this problem. What you do is you do have to be in a position where you're definitely going to make the investment. So a way to work with this is you enter into a contract to purchase the business, the franchise, whichever way you're going to go. The contract must be irrevocable, except if the E2 is denied. So in other words, you can't sign it, get approved for the E2 and say, forget it. You have to do it. Well, how are you forced to do it? How is the government knowing that you're going to do it? Well, you would put your $200,000 into an escrow account. The escrow account would say that if the E2 is approved, then the money goes into the investment directly. And if the person is denied, then the $200,000 would be refunded back to the investor. This gives the investor the safety that he or she needs so that he or she can be comfortable that, hey, I'll put my money into the escrow. I really want to do this. And the only way that money is going to be invested is if I also get my E2 visa. So this is really the way to do it. A couple of other points about this is you need to show how you got your $200,000. It's not extensive like the EB-5, but you have to explain how you got the money. And you also have to show that you have some business experience, because how could you be coming to direct and manage a company if you've never directed or managed a company? So you got to just have those little issues resolved. But this is the way you can proceed and not have to be afraid you're going to put the $200,000 in and not get your visa.
好，所以我们接下来就讲说，如果今天这申请人他走到这个公司里面来他说那我要来做这个 E2 的申请了我已经决定要来进行了但是他很担心说我今天竟然是要做出一个投资的动作，那如果投资申请没有办法得到通过的话那会怎么样那该怎么办？我的投资都已经做了那当然我们认为申请 E2 的签证的困难度并不是特别的高你当然通过的几率的话是很高的但是很多投资人当然都会申请人当然都会问到说，那如果我是一个非常不幸的非常这个遇到了什么样特殊的一个情况，那我最终没有办法取得到 E2 的签证，那该怎么办？好，那我们这边的话呢，也有特别的这个解决的一个方式那事实上跟 EB5 的项目的话过去我们所做的算是很类似因为你 E2 的话，你是要向这个领事馆这边要来证明说你是确实的将来会来做会做出这个投资这个动作那你是要透过这个投资的方案来取得到 E2 的一个签证那一个很可以避免掉投资人这个风险的动作的话呢，就是采取第一步是进行一个先进行一个合约的一个签署那这个合约上面的话，它可能会有明确的一个条例，说这个合约呢是不可被推翻的那只要你的 E2 是申请通过的话你这个合约就是 会这个成立哦，但是合约可能里面会有一个但书是，如果 E2 申请没有办法得到申请通过哦，那这个合约这个投资的协议哦，这个协定的话呢就不成立了。那另外对于资金方面的投入的话呢，一开始呢它是我们可以让它投资到一个第三方的一个监管银行当中。而这个第三方的监管银行，它里面所释放的款项的条件，就是取决于到底这个 E2 签证是否可以获得到批准。所以如果 E2 签证得到批准的话，我们所投入可能是20万的这个资金，就从监管账户释放到所选择的这个投资的方案上面。那如果是被拒绝的话，那当然直接从监管账户将这个投资的款项退回到投资人申请人一开始汇出的这个账户上面。所以透过这样子的合同的制定，还有这个监管账户的一个设立我们可以来一方面可以来向美国政府来证明说你是确实有投资的一个决心你是会做出这个投资的动作那另外一方面的话呢，也可以确保投资人在资金方面的一个安全性。那另外其他的条件的话呢，包括说你要说明你的投资金额比方说这个20万的资金来源当然不需要像美国的1:5你做出这个特别做出这个很详细的这个资金来源说明但是有部分的说明的话你还是要提出来的那再来的话就是商业的经验因为 E2 的签证是一个商业投资嘛所以你必须你可能过去你是有一些经商的一个经验这是需要来体现出来的才代表说你是有能力可以到这个美国来管理你所投入的 E2 的这个投资方案。Robert?
So how can we help you? We can help you in a couple of ways. Of course, I'm a lawyer, and so obviously I would help you with the filing of the application, but what do you file with? How do you find the business? You may be in Asia, far away. You may know the United States for vacation, but maybe not know it for business. One big mistake people make is they'll come and they'll start looking around without knowing a city or an area very well and pick a business which really probably wasn't the best choice, and if they had lived there for a long time, may have not have made that choice. So we help you find a business. We can help you find existing businesses, such as a restaurant, an entertainment center, something of that matter. We could also help you with franchises. I'll just be discussing 2 specific franchises I work with toward the end of this presentation. But in those ways, we can help you in both the legal side, but also direct you to a business in which you can invest that would make sense for you.
所以刚刚有提到Robert 这边讲到的地方就是我们可以提供什么样的协助给这些E2 的申请人那当然Robert 本身他是律师嘛他所代表他们的律师事务所是可以做出这个法律方面的一个服务当然对于申请这个 E2 的签证来协助投资人来准备这些文件。在商业方面的话呢我们也是可以提供Robert 这边也是可以提供一系列的这个协助因为你 E2 今天既然是要进行投资那你到底是要投资到什么样的行业别什么样的一个地点可能对于一个海外的申请人，他可能过去在美国他地理位置并不是特别的熟悉，或者他了解美国的话，他并不了解说商业的一个商业的一个情况所以这个时候Robert 和我们这边的话就可以加入进来，来协助这个申请人挑选合适的这个投资的方案投资的类别那可能是我们可以找寻一些已经存在的商业一些存在的一些生意像是餐饮或者说是像是一些娱乐业等等我们可以协助找寻那另外呢我们也可以协助推荐一些我们过去所了解的一些加盟的一个企业像在今天我们的这个PPT 当中最后的一个页面的话呢，我们就会讲到有2个这个加盟连锁型的这个企业它可能是可以提供投资人来申请人来选择做出投资。
So how do you prove the investment? The main way you prove the investment is by showing you've already invested some money or putting the money into the escrow. That's really what this is all about. Now, some offshoots of this include, if you've already spent some money, you would probably have some receipts, some contracts, some canceled checks. You might have inventory, goods on hand, and other assets, but generally that won't be the case in the kind of cases we would pursue. You might have intellectual or intangible property. Again, that's a factor, generally not in our cases. And then, of course, you'll want to have some professional services, a lawyer, a CPA. Lawyer, I mean, we are a law firm, so we can handle a lot of that for you. CPA really is more down the road once you actually start operating. So the main thing is to prove that you actually have the cash transferred into a bank and it's in escrow, or maybe you spent a bit of it. That's really how you prove the investment.
所以我们如何来证明说我们这个投资的行为会产生哦？那第一块的话就是你要证明你有这个资金嘛。我刚刚有提到说你是一定程度上面的话，你是要提供说你是有这个现金的一个存在的哦。那再来的话，你可能是有签署一些合同哦，你这个投资资金你有投入到像刚刚讲的方式哦，这个第三方的监管户头里面来做保存。哦，那有一些如果说你已经是在申请E2之前，你已经有投资到企业里面，并且已经花了钱，你可能会有一些这个支票的证明啊，或者说有一些合同哦，你已经跟其他人做生意了，你有一些合同方面的证明，但这个或者说你有一些无形的资产，你有一些智慧财产权，是已经获得了哦。但是在我们的这个架构之下的话，我们所做的这些设计旗下的话，可能这些并不是符合我们所讲的哦。但是这些都是E2的一些简单的一些要求条件哦。那不一定是每个都需要有哦。你可能还没有花钱哦，但是你却这个资金你有投入到了监管银行当中哦。那还有你是已经有签署了这些合同存在哦，那你就可以并且证明你有这个投资的这个现金哦，你就可以来做E2的这个申请哦。那至于说法律方面的话，律师Robert 这边协助啊，或者说是像 CPA 会计师的话，可能是在你企业开了之后以后才会有的哦，所以这个可能目前才是不需要太过于这个在乎这个专业服务啊会计师这一块的业务。
So one of the things you need to show would be a business plan, unless, of course, you invest in a franchise or an existing business. In that case, the business plan would really just be the historical numbers of the existing business or the business plan which is presented by the franchise company. Again, this is why we recommend you go into an existing business or a franchise. It just makes the case much easier, and frankly, you have a much higher likelihood of success.
好，所以再来一个重要的就是商业计划哦，你是必须要呈现一份商业计划书哦。但是对于商业计划书的话呢，我们如果刚刚所讲到投资的这个3种方式哦，是比较偏向于投资到一个已经存在的一个生意当中，或者是加入到一个加盟的企业哦，因为你投资到一个已经存在的生意里面的话呢，你可能过去的一些历史的记录哦，这些就是你的商业计划书哦，你的企业生意的这个营运的一个情况。那另外一个推荐呢，就是一个加盟企业。那加盟企业这边它就是有它一系列的这个原本已经存在的商业计划书，它是可以现成的来呈现哦。所以这也是为什么我们会推荐这2种的方式。而不是成立一个做一个新的一个生意啊，因为新的生意的话，你要证明你的商业计划是确实可行的，这一块的话是可能比较困难哦，所以比较于一个加盟企业或者一个已经存在的生意，你的商业计划是可以更容易的来被证实哦，那你的成功几率的话也会提高不少。
So the next thing you have to remember is you have to be the owner of the company. I find this slide interesting because this guy, when I was 28, I wasn't half as good looking as this guy, but that's beside the point. You need to have at least 51% of the company. You need to have some business experience, and you have to be the head of the company.
好，所以 你必须是要是企业主哦，你要有这个管理的经验哦，你必须要握有这个企业的51%的股份哦，那你是直接或者间接管理这个企业这样子。
So for E2 visa procedure, this is the legal side of it. We go through various steps. On this screen, you can see 7 steps. The first thing is we have to gather all the documents. We would send a checklist to you, and you would send the information we need. With that information, we will prepare an E2 packet that will be comprised of your information, plus the information about the company, which we'll have. You don't have to send us that. You'll get an interview probably about 3 or 4 months after we submit the documentation. You go to your home country consulate and you have the interview. The interview is actually not as formal as you would think. You're going to stand in front of a glass window talking through a microphone. It probably won't take more than 5 to 10 minutes. The officer who reviews the case may not have even looked at the case before he or she is talking to you. So you just have to be very well aware of what you're investing in and know about the business so that you can answer questions about it. You would leave your passport, and within a week, 3 to 5 business days, you will get the passport back with the E2 visa. You go pick it up, or in some cases, the consulate will mail it to you. And then you can come to the US. You would land at an airport, get the visa put into your passport, and you're on your way. And we'll be there to help you get going.
所以我们简单叙述一下整个 E2 的一个申请的程序那当然第一块就是准备所有收集这些文件嘛。好，那我们会提供一个文件的一个清单那就必须申请人的话必须将所需要的这些文件来进行做准备。在第二个部分的话，就是我们会把这个 E2 的一个打包一个文件的一个打包的一个整合那其中包括了申请人的个人的文件以外还有这个商业上面的这个文件。那商业这个文件的话呢，我们这边就会协助来做准备了那再来的话呢是就一旦 E2 的申请文件递送了之后呢大概在3-4个月左右以后就可以这个申请人必须要进行面试的动作那面试的话呢是在申请人的自己本身的这个国家来做 E2 签证的一个面试那面试它并不是一个很正式的一个面试，可能所需要的时间大概是5到10分钟左右的时间就可以完成了，而且它是直接在窗口这边隔着玻璃跟这个移民官面试官这边来做面试的动作，而且这个移民面试官呢他可能还在面试你之前他还没有看过任何的你所提供的这些准备的这些商业的文件所以他可能就是当下的来提出来他的问题来提出来他的疑问所以一个很重要的一点就是我们申请人他必须要准备好这个要了解这个企业的你所投资的这个企业的一些相关的讯息，你的运作你才可以及时的来回复这个移民官所提出来的面试的问题。然后那再来下一步的话，那当然你就将你的护照留在了这个现场。那3到5天之后这个领事馆他会再要求你回来取回你的护照。那当这个时候呢，你的护照上面就已经贴上了这个 E2 的这个签证那取得到签证之后那当然就可以离境飞到美国境内。
So now we get to the interview day. I really kind of explained it just before, but I'll just quickly go through it again. The interview will be quick, 5 to 30 minutes, usually about 10 minutes. You must study your package thoroughly. The reason for this is because you're to be active in the company, so of course you need to know about the company. You need to know about your job. So we would want you to read it and be prepared. Like I said, most of the time the officers have not reviewed much before you go in. So you just have to be prepared for whatever questions come up. But generally the interview is pretty easy.
好，所以我们再强调一下，因为面试的这个环节算是 E2 的一个关键所以我们再一次的讲一下这个面试的一个过程那面试过程 这我们虽然上面写说5到30分钟哦，但一般差不多是5到10分钟之内就可以完成了哦。那申请人在去面试之前的话哦，那必须要了解这个商业计划哦，还有这个你里面所提到的这些商业的行为哦。那因为你是自己要到美国当地来管理哦，这个来主动的管理这个公司，积极的参与到公司的运作，所以当然是必须要了解说公司的日常运作的一些细节哦。那所以准备好了之后呢，这个面试官签证官他可能对于如同刚刚所讲的，面试你之前的话，没有看过任何你所提供的这些资料，所以他是当下看了资料之后来提问，来提供这个来询问这些商业的问题哦。那我们申请人的话就要及时的来做回答哦。所以在去面谈之前的话一个很重要的关键就是要准备好这个面试的这个内容但是面试的过程的话并没有像想象中的那么困难甚至还可以说是一个比较轻松简单的一个过程。
So now you have your E2 visa. So now what? Well, you come to the United States. Because you have the E2 visa, you can work in your company and you can have your company do all sorts of things. Obviously, the main thing it will do is the main business. But if you want to take on some other things, you can put it through your company as well. Your spouse will get an employment authorization card. So your spouse can do anything he or she wants to do to work. Your children who are under 21, as I mentioned, can come with you. They can go to school, but they cannot work. And again, when they turn 21, they're either going to have to leave the country or, more likely, you would change them over to a student visa.
所以取得到 E2 签证之后那我们是可以做什么样的事情呢？那对于主申请人来讲的话，因为你是投资到一个生意当中你当然是可以在你这个所选择投资的这个企业里面来做工作或者你是可以透过，因为你是拥有一间公司的这个企业主嘛你可以透过拥有这支企业拥有这个公司来做其他方面的一些延伸性的一些发展这个可能就是看主申请人是怎么样的来做安排对于配偶来讲的话那他是持有，他是可以在美国工作的或者是持有这个 E2 签证，他是可以做任何他所想要进行的事情他是可以在美国境内做其他工作也是可以的那小孩子的话，他可以念书，但他不能工作，但是还是要强调一点，21岁以下的小孩才可以符合 E2 的申请，21岁以上他是不符合的所以之后的话，他要延续他的移民的一个身份的话，那小孩子这边可能要另外的来做安排，在21岁以后当然21岁之前的话呢他是可以陪同着这个主申请人取得到这个持有这个 E2 的身份。
At this point, I'll talk about different opportunities that we have. First of all, as I mentioned, we do have a few restaurants and some small entertainment centers. These are not franchised, but they are existing. If you're interested in something that's open and operating, we could put you into that business. We also have 2 franchise opportunities. The first one is a famous company, which you probably have heard of, called Dunkin'. Used to be called Dunkin' Donuts, but they changed it just to Dunkin' because the company is growing very fast and trying to accentuate other products, especially coffee. But the Dunkin' Donuts would work with the $200,000. You would have a local partner who would own 49% and help you run it. The debt required for this business would be found and guaranteed by the partner, not by you. Your risk would only be the $200,000 you invest. And these Dunkin' Donuts tend to be very successful. You don't see Dunkin' Donuts close. So this is a good project because it's simple. It's not a complex kind of company. It knows its product, has huge name recognition, and as many as they open, they all seem to stay open. So that's one good possibility that you might want to consider, along with the restaurants or family entertainment centers. And lastly, we are working with a car wash company that's starting a relatively new franchise, has many locations. These are kind of speedy car washes. You get a gun, you wash the car yourself. In some cases, you can have somebody spray for you, but these are very simple car wash companies. They're very cash intensive. do very well, and the $200,000 would work for this as well.
好，所以我们最后跟各位提一下说，我们可以协助寻找的一些 E2 投资的机会哦。像刚刚我们有提到说，两种方案是我们比较推荐的嘛，一种是投入到一个已经存在的一个企业当中，哦，那另外的话是加入到一个这个 franchise 所谓的这个连锁的企业。哦，那已经存在的企业的话，我们手上有一些名单哦 ，Robert 手上他有一些名单可以来做推荐哦，包括说这个餐厅哦，包括说一些 entertainment 做娱乐的一些事业哦，那这些并不是连锁的企业哦，所以它是一个独立已经存在的这些企业哦。那如果说申请人他是有兴趣的话，我们可以来推荐介绍这些独立的这些已经存在的商业哦。那另外的一个做法的话，就是在我们这一页上面有提到的哈，接下来这两页里面有提到的，一个的话呢是这个Dunkin Donuts Dunkin Donuts 它现在已经改名了，它现在叫做 Dunkin 而已，它把 Donut 拿掉，因为它在美国它现在是事业版图，它是在扩充，而且它希望是有很大一块重心是发展在他们的咖啡的这个产业上面所以把甜甜圈的这个字样取掉他们现在叫做 Dunkin。那这个就是一个投资到一个加盟企业的一个商业模式那投资金额的话呢，就是20万那与这个当地的一个 local partner 一个当地的合作伙伴来做配合那这个合作伙伴呢，来协助开一间店里面所需要办理的手续，还有资金方面的一些融资那我们申请人的话呢，只需要提出20万美元的投资就好了那20万美元的话，申请人他是占51%的这个股份那我们 local partner 这个当地的这个合伙人的话，占有49%但是 local partner 他是承担的所有的风险我们申请人的话，唯一的一个风险就是这20万的美元但是这个 Dunkin Donut 这个加盟的好处就是在于它的name recognition 就是你的名声的知名度因为这个品牌在美国开业是很少有听过有失败的案例每一间的这个店呢事实上都经营的非常的成功所以它是成功的几率的话呢，它是很高的又是再加上是一个很有名望的一个品牌所以以20万这样子一个投资金额符合 E2 的一个申请那我们认为是可以合适来推荐这样子一个加盟方案给我们的申请人另外一个方案的话呢就是一个 car wash 一个洗车场这个洗车场的话是一个新的比较新的一个 franchise 新成立的这个加盟的一个企业那它叫做 Speedy Car Wash 就是很快速的这个你进进出出是很快速的所以你产生的现金流的流量是非常的是非常的高的那它是自助洗车你是可能就拿了一个自己有一个管子它还有一些喷泡沫的一些机器你自己就可以自助的来做这个来做快速的一个清洗那这在美国现在境内来讲算是还蛮热门的很多大家开车你可能到一般的这个洗车场那你可能要花的时间是很长的，但是你进进出出这种自助洗车的话，可能10分钟就搞定所以现在对于这样子一个现金流产量比较高的这种洗车业别的话我们也是有这样子一个加盟体系可以来协助投资人来进行20万的一个投资所以刚刚讲到这两个 franchise 这两个连锁的产业一个是 Dunkin 的这个店面甜甜圈的这个店面，还有这个洗车场这个 car wash 都是我们现在可以提供投资人来进行做选择。
So this is our presentation. It explains how the E2 visa works. What are the good things about it? What are the things you have to be aware of and be careful of? We've explained how we help you with the legal side of it and how we help you find a business and are able to engage into the E2 process. I hope you found it informative. If you have questions, of course, you can always reach out to the group. You can reach out to me. and I'm always happy to help you, and I hope to work with you in the future. Thank you.
好，那所以我们Robert 这边做一个结尾哈，那这个就是我们今天所提到的 E2 的签证哦，所以大致的一个情况的话，都在我们这个PPT 里面的话，我们都是有呈现哦，包括说 E2 它的优势是在哪里，有哪些地方你是需要来注意的哦，还有对于这个法律层面方面的话哦，我们是怎么样的一个申请流程？最终包括说商业行为上面的话，我们是可以提供什么样的一个协助，所以这些各个方面的话，我们Robert 和我们公司这边的话都可以提供一系列的一个服务给这些在取得到格瑞纳达身份之后还对于 E2 签证有取得的兴趣的这些申请人，那我们是可以提供这样子的一个服务所以希望今天我们提供的讯息对各位来讲是有帮助的。那当然在这之后还有任何的问题的话都欢迎跟我们公司还有我们各个分公司的经理这边来做询问来做咨询。那如果想要跟我们 Robert 这边有进一步的联系的话那也都欢迎先跟我们公司这边来进行讨论那我们可能看律师这边在进行开会还是做什么样的一个动作所以今天E2 的介绍大概是到这边告一个段落。
是我们这边有来自于观众朋友的一个问题是这样子的，就是说想请问一下，中国人持有格林纳达护照之后，如果要申请这个 E2 是在哪里申请？那如果是在国内申请，比如说是在广州领馆申请的话，假如说护照上面就是格林纳达护照上面并没有就是这个入境中国的这个签证章，这样子是否对于申请是否会有影响？
Okay. Robert, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, we got a live question. So,
Okay.
So the first question is, for a Chinese citizen, a mainland Chinese citizen, after getting the Grenada passport and apply for E2, where do they submit their E2 applications? Which consulate in what country? Now, do they submit it and get an interview?
Grenada would be the best one.
Would be Grenada. Okay.
Yeah.
And can they apply in China?
But China doesn't allow the E2 visa for Chinese citizens, so that's problematic. But Grenada is the best place.
OK， 所以我们律师这边建议的话，就是在格瑞纳达境内如果我们是取得到格瑞纳达身份的话，在格瑞纳达境内来进行 E2 的这个面试，还有 E2 的这个申请因为中国的话是没有和美国这边是有 E2 的这个条例在的所以在中国境内的话，我们是不建议。
好的 ，Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you. 好的，那我们今天的这个就是有关于格林纳达和美国 E2 的介绍就到这边，因为时间也很长，两位律师都做了非常详尽的介绍，谢谢大家的耐心收看。那么在此呢，也代表 CIFA 祝大家工作顺利，生活愉快，谢谢大家。